You are one of those versatile artists that can literally do anything. Now you've also written a book, besides acting, besides singing, and being the consummate entertainer. That world of glitz and glamour that you were so familiar with, was that the real Alistair Izobell?
No, not at all. And it's a wonderful kind of emancipation now to reflect on it and be and revisit from my memory and go that that was all smoke and mirrors. And it is a world that is imaginative and magical and creative and all of that. And so when I reflect on it now, I know that that was a very different version of myself, albeit that it was a wonderful, overwhelming space, and tangibly good. It was never who I was intended to be.
Was there a particular moment that you came to that realization?
It was only post my situation on the 13th of September, and reflecting and going through therapy and experiencing the magnitude of what I had been harboring and carrying with me for 4 decades, that I realized that was never, even though I loved it, I loved being part of this soiree of wonderful things and the lights and all of that. I also had to reflect and go back and go, you were someone who had been living with depression for many, many years. And this vehicle that was wonderful and catapulted you out of the socioeconomic gates of poverty and this boulevard of broken dreams, it was all just theatrical, life theatrics. And I don't speak of it unkindly. I'm just aware of how incredibly fickle, real that world is.
We can talk about that world in a moment and how and when you had your first breakthrough. But let's talk about a breakthrough in a different sense and context. You mentioned the 13th of September 2023 when you attempted to end your life. What led up to that pivotal moment?
Things, and I'm very, very open about it now. And one cannot blame the industry or anything else, or you cannot blame this world that you were part of. What I do blame are the very, very bad decisions that I made in my lifetime. Be that business decisions, whether that was creative decisions, whether that was just self-adulating decisions. And I also am very open about the fact that I had a 7-year extramarital affair with someone that I would never mention, purely because it's not important to destroy another one's life. And that bore the reality of confronting the fact that you become so self-idolizing, being in the fast track lane, and this incessant need to be validated by people,
Mm.
and wrapped around this madness of your ego. And when people say that a little bit of ego in this industry is important, no, it's all nonsense. Ego is part of destruction, because you start becoming very, very self-absorbed. But my decisions, and also the 7-year extramarital affair, that once I had gone through my divorce and all of that, the person walked away and left me in a space where I had to confront my entire life. And also, this person had told people that I'm delusional and denied our entire journey together. And I just sat at this very table I'm sitting, and I took over 100 very lethal tablets. And I came to a point where I did not want to partake in this madness of having to be this person that everyone literally judges all the time. And in this world of entertainment and being in the public space, as you very, very well know, Lynette, is that before you do anything, people are judging you already. You judging yourself by what you're about to put out there, what people are getting, because that's the nature of the work that we do. And so I just got to a point where I did not want to carry that burden anymore. And the crashing of my business and my personal life, and the reality of the collateral damage that I'd left within my family structure, was just all too much to bear. And it just came to a point where I did not deserve to be here anymore. and to look at the people that I'd hurt so badly, and my life was not important anymore.
That must have been a extremely dark space that you were in.
Well, it's called the dark night of the soul for that very reason, is that there is such, and most people who think about people who commit suicide or suicide survivors is that they are cowards. On the contrary, it takes an enormous amount of peace and acceptance and strength and courage to actually unpack from its cartridges the tablets or whatever your choice of ending it is. There is no cowardice in it. There's a great amount of strength in wanting to relieve everyone from the barrage of destruction that your life has contributed to theirs.
How did you start putting back the pieces of your life after that? How were you found? What was the inner conversation, if at all, that you had with yourself?
So I spent, it's a year and 2 weeks maybe, since I attempted to take my life. And ek is baie dankbaar op die huidige oomblik omrede daar is 'n tydperk in my lewe waar daar totaal niemand vir my omring het nie. Daar was nie een mens van daai lewe van my wat daar vir my in daai tydperk was nie. And I reflect on it now, Lynette, and I'm so grateful that people who I thought and expected to be around me were not there, because it would have just ended up being another opportunity for to garner more stories and insight into my world and life that I don't want to give people that ownership anymore. But the journey is supposed to be a lonely one. It's supposed to
Mm.
be one that you journey on your own, because only that way does it become cathartic for you to rebuild and understand what the life that you didn't want, that you now you have to live and not exist. And I live 150 meters from the ocean. I can see it as I'm sitting here. And the ocean has always been, the ocean and the beach has always been my
Mm.
place of solace, where I go to express my gratitude, my joy, and also my deepest hurt. And I walked aimlessly many days for a year and 2 weeks, just walking and trying to make sense of this life. And I was okay with it because I had given myself post the attempt, and being a suicide survivor now, I had to go through a suicide survivor's guilt. I had to make sense of me. I had to accept my family ostracizing me. I had to accept that there was no one around me and that I had to make sense of it, and also take responsibility of my contribution to where I found myself. But I'd also given myself 1 year to mourn my family, to mourn the contributions to this deluge of destruction, and to mourn the person that I was, and thank that person who I was, and introduce the new self to the old person and go,
Mm.
thank you for bringing me to this point. I now am going to live a brand new version of who I really want to be and who God preordained me to be. And that's where you start putting one foot in front of the other and start accepting that getting through 1 hour by hour is okay.
Is there a ritual that you have embraced and created for yourself to do one day at a time? Because you're
No,
still as busy as ever, you're still so involved, yet there's a inner peace that a person can sense. You can feel that this person has gone through some deep catharsis.
absolutely, Lynette. And the only difference of the busyness that I'm doing now, I'm busy for me. I'm not busy for the applause, adulation, or embracing of people or of
Yeah.
audiences. I don't, to a point, I don't care. I don't ever want to be beholden to that. I don't, I'm brutally honest now, more than I've ever been. I'm okay with not being surrounded by any of that. And and there's no ritual because I've unshackled myself from the preparatory stuff and the life that is about exceeding the expectation of others. The only person I want to exceed the expectation of now is me, in a very calm, comfortable, loving, kind way to me. And I have no expectation of people as I demand no expectation to be of me.
What led to that moment that you decided, I need to write about this? I need to share my story of being broken en route to healing.
So I've been very lucky to have been surrounded by really amazing creatives, whether that be poets, painters, writers, singers, and also as a child, as you know, between the legendary late Tully Peterson and the legendary David Kramer, they have always instilled in us as children that everyone has a story. You have to tell
Mm.
your story. And I guess it was David and I had worked many months ago on something of my life. And it was, he had started a process of investigative directing with me that revisited my childhood and my journey in that boulevard of broken dreams. And I had not understood at that point yet, Lynette, that I was completely in a very dark space already. And I remember while we were working on this piece, there were moments that I would be completely inconsolable, just revisiting, taking myself to those moments, going back, vividly feeling, smelling, experiencing in my mind what I had gone through as a child. And all great and positive things, maar ek sê nog altyd, I don't like looking at children being on stage now or in the public space. It really angers me because I don't think, albeit that it was my life and that my parents did the best that they thought was for me, I don't think any 8, 9 year old child should be working full time in any industry. And as much as it catapulted me into a wonderful world and experiences and travels and all sorts of things, it was also part of getting me to this point. And I guess you have to sit back once you go through that kind of experience of wanting to take your life. And if you survive it, it is your duty to talk about it. And so going through therapy, once I had gone to the clinic and leave the hospital, I had to go straight to a clinic. And I didn't want to contribute to it because I walked in there. Well, I expected white coat people in straight jackets and all of that, but I went to a private clinic and with 15 patients, etc. And I walked in there not wanting to be part of it because I thought, these are all bedorned people. What am I doing here? I'm not bedorned. I'm only to find out a day later, nie jy is wat bedorned en jy soek eintlik die sak. So you need to be part of this. And once I had handed myself over to the therapy and psychiatrists and psychologists and the daily occupational therapists and all of that, because it's a full day of therapy, I understood how important it was to write to me, to forgive me, to go back to that little boy and ask him to forgive what I had done with his dreams and hopes. And I had to sit there and understand that the letters were to me. And only once I'd got to a point of 4 and 5 letters did I understand that this was a manuscript. And it started unfolding, and I realized that I was writing to heal and that I was okay to, to break in order to heal.
When you look at where you now and you look back to the years when you started in this industry, and you said earlier, no child at the age of 8 or 9 should be on stage working full time. What are some, if you are comfortable explaining or sharing, what are some of the lessons and the letters that you shared with your younger self?
Well, is that I had to forgive my parents who did only what they thought for my future, because there I was stuck in a boulevard of broken dreams. And I say that because we all come as, and I say this without prejudice, that people of color had to, our parents had to shelve their dreams. They had to throw it away and discard of it, because that's what the tapestry of apartheid did. And we lived in these socioeconomic gates that were going to be our future. And any opportunity that was better than what the current, in that time, status quo was was what they were going to gift us with. I had to go back to that little boy and say, you have to forgive Elizabeth and John Izobell, because they only did what they thought was best for me and you. And they only knew what they thought was good. And so I had to also forgive the journey that brought me to be introduced, surrounded by, and got myself into a space of drinking and excessive drinking, and thinking that was the medicated way of dealing with
Mm,
life.
mm,
And I had never ever done drugs. I'm not a smoker of anything other than cigarettes. And I've certainly tried almost every drug you can think of, and I never liked any of that. So I'm very grateful that I never succumbed to what many of my colleagues and friends had succumbed to. But I had to forgive myself for that aspect of the world that I was in,
mm.
that also bore to contributing to a lot of the negatives in my life. And I had to also go back and forgive myself for the husband that I didn't successfully become to a woman who deserved a lot better in 3 decades of being with me. And I had to forgive myself for not being a present father, particularly with my eldest daughter. But I had to go and forgive myself in order to release myself from that, so that I don't end up being a victim of my sin for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And so I refuse a victim of what people know of me and wat ek totaal nou blootstel. I will never accept any judgment or opinion of anyone. You are entitled to it in the
Mm,
privacy of your
mm,
thoughts and
mm.
conversations, but I will never allow that to be carried by me ever again in my life.
This is what I find so remarkable and moving, Alistair, is there's a level of vulnerability and openness and transparency to talk about very deep and emotional, mental, and psychologically emotional scars. What has when did you realize you can be vulnerable and be whole?
Lynette, you just get to a day that you are okay with it all, that you are okay. I'm okay to weep. I'm okay to be happy. I'm okay to say what I want to and need to, because it's only with the kind of the enormity of wanting to take your life comes with a complete non-judgment towards yourself anymore. And I, as I say to you, I do not care what anyone thinks of me and my life anymore, because I now am important. I have lived in a world, as you do, of serving people. Responsibility that people don't understand that comes with a microphone is enormous. And so, whether that be as a journalist or as a creative in my space, souls and hearts are on our sleeves all the time. And most people use that as a cliche, but it isn't. And I reference that to, for example, when my dad died, I was performing, and Kim phoned me, my ex-wife, and said, as I was walking on stage, and said, your dad just passed on. I had to walk onto that stage, perform. I had to go back to the house. I had to go and remove him and take him to the mortuary. And then I had to go and do another performance after that. When my mom died during COVID, I had to go in with hazmat suit, double gloves, mask, just in that, sit by her bedside in the ICU COVID ward. And then once she had passed on, I had to go into undertaker mode and then remove her and take her to the mortuary and do that. So I am okay
Mhm.
with serving me now, with being in a space where it is about the moments where if I'm in this life and I feel in this corner and weep, that's what I'm going to do. If I decide I'm going to drink a case of beers, that's what I'm going to do. If I decide I'm going to get up here and drive to the airport and take a flight to wherever I don't need a visa, that's what I'm going to do. I no longer will live in service of others to the detriment of my own well-being.
And so many people still do that, keep up a facade to please everybody around them, and so much is lost, so much of the self is lost in the process. You find yourself now where you are able to serve in a different way, where you create the safe spaces for men to talk about what they go through, their trauma. Tell me a little bit about that work that you've taken upon yourself now.
Well, and I don't mean to be sexist or ostracize women or in any way do something that people would find offensive. But I also don't care because I am a man. I understand men. I
Yes.
cannot speak for because it's not who I am and what I understand. And so we know that the patriarchal system that we as a society had to just accept is destructive. So men think and have been governed not to be vulnerable. They have been forced to be providers in a space where economically we cannot live without both partners contributing to the success of our lives financially. So men journey in a very lonely, dark space and lane in life. And it's only when men are together that they speak openly in a non kind of lion space where they are vulnerable.
Yeah, I hear you.
And so I know in my world is that I had to constantly put this facade on and this mask and the smoke and mirrors. And once had come out of the space and the journey of therapy and all of that, I wanted people to understand the darkness behind the spotlight. I wanted them to understand because at that time I was also playing a villain on a called Arendsvlei, where ek is die bose karakter wat net wild and meanwhile I had just survived suicide. I was broken and I needed people to understand that I'm no different
Mhm.
to a matriculant who is who cannot cope with what they are going through and there's no help and I wanted to speak with the man who had forgotten about how to be okay with crying and expressing his feelings. I wanted the man who was abused physically, emotionally, sexually to go and revisit that moment and forgive themselves and the perpetrator. And I wanted to speak to who were broken. And being invited to speak into the lives of people who were depressed, suicide survivors, and also to at seminars and you know the Namibia. I've been to Namibia, I've been to Durban, Johannesburg, and a few places, and I also started creating a space, a retreat for men to just come and speak, to get the tools to access because we also think that there's no help, but there are
Yes.
people waiting to help. All you need to say is, here I am, I stand up and I go, I need help. And to me, it's hugely important for men to know that you have to start saying, I need to be healed. And it's okay. And you do not need to worry about anyone. And being broken is exactly what you need in order to heal.
Do you find that people now, even after hearing your journey and what you're busy with now in your life, that they still try to put you back into that space of, no, but you're the entertainer. You're the guy that entertains and sings songs, and that's who we know and that's who we want to show up every time.
That person doesn't exist anymore, so he can't show up. And I will not be dragged back into something that I've unshackled myself from. So I don't entertain people's wanting to direct who they want. I've done that. You get the true, broken to heal version of Alistair Francis Isabel. That's who you get now.
If there's a song that describes your journey or either where you find yourself now, what would that be?
I had just found my daughter dropped something at me. I was busy with with the book, obviously,
Mm.
and I'd asked her to just look in one of my spaces at the house, and she brought something. I wrote an album called Alistair Izobell, Just Me Net Sewer. And I only know now, Lynette, that all the stuff I'd written in my life, and it's starting to cement all the time. I'd written a song particularly for that album, and it's called Tomorrow is Another Day. I'd written it in 2013, and it only found its home now. And it is the very last paragraph in my book, the lyrics of the song, because it starts by saying, if tonight was the night that the sun set on my life, would I look back and be proud of the choices I made, of the things that I did? I listened to it, my hair's raising because I was standing on the balcony just before you and I spoke. And I just wept because the chorus is, tomorrow is another chance to fix it all just like the master planned. Tomorrow is another day to be all that I couldn't be today. And I couldn't believe that that song had found its home 11 years later. And the lyrical content is the journey of the last year in my life. And so I want to remind those who find themselves in the dark space that they're in, and in a space called the dark night of the soul. Tomorrow is another chance. Today might look dark, but there's someone waiting to switch on the light for you. You don't have to do it alone. And it's okay to be broken, because healing comes when you have nothing more to give. And it's going to be okay. It never is not okay. God intended it to be okay. And if I could do what I'm doing now and be okay, these two hands are open to take yours and hold it. You belong here.
That it's very, very, very powerful, Alistair. And I know, I believe in the writings of Rumi where he says, what you seek is seeking you. And I always believe whoever is meant to hear your words, it will resonate with them. And oftentimes we do the work because that is what we do. That's how we live our passions and our dreams. And we never understand always how impactful that can be. You know, that how that can become seed in soil, fertile soil that will only germinate in the course of life. And this for me is so beautiful, the way you explain that. Who do you hope will read Broken to Heal?
As you just said, and as I believe, it will find itself in the hands, in the homes, and in the spaces that it belongs. When you write, when you commit, when you give, the recipient will always be the right recipient. And also when you are in a space that I know I'm in, my life, which is that book, will never be in the hands that it should not be in. The eyes that shouldn't read it will not get to see
Will not
it.
find it. Mm, I hear
And
you.
so it will be where it's supposed to be.
Does this mean you are now lost to acting and performing on stage and um, do what we've come to know and appreciate about you?
I will only do what serves my soul and what makes my heart smile. It will all be by choice, but what I also know, it will also be preordained. I I don't want anything else other than to live in gratitude and activate and access God's grace every morning and go through it knowing that what I now do is in service in a very different way to those
Mm.
who will need what I have to give. And so if a movie comes along and I like it, yes, I will. Do I want to do shows? No. Do I want to write? More than ever now again. But now I live in a very different world where I get to travel the world again in a very different capacity. And I am just satisfied in being present in every moment now.
Oh,
That's it.
moment. Yeah.
I don't want ek wil nie van môre dinkie, ek wil nie praat van as I say, and I'm busy with a documentary also literally called that, The Darkness Behind the Spotlight. And I want to be there for those who are on that lonely journey because you don't have to be alone. It's
How do we
okay.
create How do we create more space and spaces to talk about mental health that people are not filled with shame when they want to reach out or when they're struggling, when they're trying to make sense of their depression, for example?
It's very, very difficult to penetrate people who have been so gated about their emotions. And I really do believe, Lynette, that besides the kind of retreats and things, and there is access. There's a lot of men speaking about their brokenness and about their depression and all of that, and anxiety and their struggles. And so I am aware that there are many, many success stories by men activating or accessing those wonderful avenues medically and holistically and naturally and all of that. And so like the hypnotherapist that I go to, so I do hypnotherapy, I do natural energy healing, I do psychology and psychiatry. Because I get from all of it what I need.
Or modalities? Mm.
Yes, and also I don't care if you think I'm bedorned. I don't care what your opinion is. And I think the second we unshackle ourselves from that aspect and
Yeah.
understand
Mm.
that being depressed does not make you insane or mad or delusional or anything. It's just accepting that you are not coping well enough on your own and that you need
Mm.
tools and help. And so older people, yes, it's important to talk about it. But I think where we need to get into, and that's what I'm busy working on now, is to get into schools because that's where we start developing that whole world of wondering, worrying, and being so afraid of opinions
Mm. Yeah.
because bullying
But also the
happens
coping
there. And
skills.
absolutely, absolutely. And so I want to get into that space of speaking into the lives of young people. And also, Lynette, I can't be naive in not saying that having a public profile is important to utilize for this very work that I want to do. Um, because it makes people understand that
Mm,
it doesn't only happen to people who are not in the public eye.
got it. Absolutely.
So I have to use this gift that that and I don't deny my journey. I just want a different reason now to use this name, Alistair Francis Izobell.
So when the book launched, tell me about the book launch, tell me about all the plans surrounding that and where the book can be found. If you planning anything spectacular, is it going to be low key? Where's the launch? How do people contact you if they want to read this book? Because honestly, just from listening to you, I do believe that it will resonate with so many people, not only attending or buying the book or watching and listening to Amplify with Lynette when they listen to this interview. I do think that the time is right. That is needed. People need to know that it is okay not to be okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to answer what you were asking and saying, there is no lights, and there aren't even fairy lights at this launch, because it's not about anything else other than this broken man who is on a journey of healing, and for others who are also on that healing journey. And I'm doing it at the Artscape Theatre on Saturday, the 2nd of November, at the stairwell. It's not even in a venue. There's any passage and there, because because I was saying to them, albeit that the venue is very busy, and they were very gracious to ask me and want me to have the book launch there, that it's not about anything else. It's about this gift of words and stories and anecdotes and literature that must just be about that. So it's the 2nd of November at Artscape on the stairwell, and it's 300 Rand for you to come to the book launch, but that includes a welcome drink, the book, a very, very short performance, and a Q&A session. And you can either get it from me on 079 749 3535. That's 079 749 3535. You send the WhatsApp to that book. It's 300 Rand to be at the book launch. But if you want to buy it and you anywhere in wherever in the world, you can get it on loot.co.za. That's LOOT.co.za. It's available there. And on Loot, it is 200 Rand, and it's accessible. And you can even pay it off on Loot. You can buy the book and pay it off, which is wonderful. I only saw that earlier, but it is available and it can be sent to you. They will ship it to you wherever you are in the world, and that's loot.co.za. So it's a low-key event, 10:30 on the 2nd of November at Artscape between 10:30 a.m. and 12:30. And it's a 2-hour space, and then I'm done. And then whatever God intends with this product, that's what will happen with it.
And may it be so.